Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the TGP series. It's a Tuesday night, which means only one thing, it's TGP1 night. We've got two fantastic races coming up for you tonight. We're here at the opening race at the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Austria, before heading over to the Hungaro Ring in Budapest. So, what have we got to tell you? What's the notice board looking like for tonight, as we're seeing one McLaren spinning round, but there's a noticeable absence of the other McLaren. Your championship leader, Shane Odiemi, also known as the Confessor, not racing tonight. So the man who could claim the title could end up losing yet more points in the title fight in his battle against Dan the Man and potentially Jack Hickey. However, he's not putting himself in a good position at all to assist and take the title tonight. Certainly isn't going to happen tonight. So, Softy, we could have another scenario where we see what will be, if my memory serves me right, only potentially the fourth time this season that Shane hasn't won a race. Or is it the fifth? Fourth or fifth? One of the other. Anyway, good evening, Softy.
I think it's fourth. I think it is fourth, and it's good to be back in the commentary box. But yeah, I think Shane does have an issue, which is why he's not racing tonight. So hopefully he gets better soon. But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic, hopefully, two races for us tonight, because the guy who's dominating is not racing, and it's going to allow Dan the Man, hopefully, to close the gap massively. And you never know what happens in the final few weeks.
Well, I think that's just it, isn't it? Really, I mean, Dan once again is presented with an opportunity where he could really eat into his main title rival's lead. He had that opportunity last week with Shane having issues and not ending up racing or completing both races. And Dan the Man got a third in Singapore and a first in Italy, Monza. So he only gained 40 points. Now you say, 40 points is still quite a lot, but Softy, when he is as far back as he is, 40 points isn't enough.
It's not, no, and I think even if Dan wins both races tonight and let's say gets the fastest lap, I think the gap's still going to be about 30 something points between them. So that's still a big margin, and especially with the pace that we've seen Odems have this season, chances are as soon as he comes back he's going to extend that quite comfortably. But the smaller the gap now, the better it is, and the more pressure it'll be under. So it could something could happen, but yeah, I'm just happy that we hopefully should have a relatively close fight for the race wins tonight, as we see a car actually in the last corner spinning.
Yep, and Cam's just gone fastest. We were just watching the last bit of that lap, so the gauntlet's now been thrown down to Dan the Man, who's just about to start his final flying lap. So it's been a bit of a disjointed start to this stream. Let's give you a quick rundown as we're watching Dan the Man through the first couple of corners. So New Zealand Cam is your provisional pole sitter. He's just set that time in 1 minute 4.4. Dan the Man we're watching on screen at the moment at 1 minute 4.6. Matt Tibos back in form, but he's on a 1 minute 4.7, currently P3. Dan the Man is a second down in sector 1, so doesn't look like he's going to be improving. Maybe going for a double warm-up lap potentially. Matt Tibos has just come around the last corner, but we'll keep it on down, see how he gets on. Phil Bardwell currently up in 5th place. Good for him so far. Alistair Bain in P6. Dan Morris. Alistair Bain P5. P6 is Dan Morris. Jack Pearson up in P7 at the moment with Dom Smith provisionally P8. Jack Hickey, your reigning TGP1 champion, all the way down in P9, with Jean all the way down in P10. Court, Dan the Man's teammate, is P11 with ERT Jordan 12th. Magic Poop Cannon 13th. Mr. Chiapelli 14th. And Jake Davies, who we saw having a spin a little bit earlier on, P15. Softy, tell us who you're keeping an eye on at the moment. Is Matt Tibos having a good run at the moment?
He's backed off, actually. I think he messed up turn 1, so I think he'll be going for a cool down, same with as Dan the Man, as Dan starts his now actual flying lap. But yeah, Matt Tibos doing a second lap on those tyres in a moment.
Yeah, well, let's see how Dan gets on then. He's got 1 lap to do this, and he needs to find 0.2 of a second would give him pole position, barring any improvements from anybody else. We've got everybody on track at the moment, apart from Cam, who has just retired in the pit lane. So Jack Hickey's on an outlap. I think he's about to cross the line. I think he's coming to the last couple of corners, so it's actually going to be quite close for Jack Hickey. Whether he's going to... I don't think he is, actually, looking at the timing screen I've got in front of me here. But Dan the Man, then, as he's ramping his way up through Sector 2, we'll get an idea on how he's going to be getting on. And is he going to be improving? Is he going to take that provisional pole position spot away from Cam?
Yeah, very wide. He's actually 2 tenths down, so he actually was half a tenth down. He's actually spun there, so that is it over for him. And Matt Tibos as well then, I think is the next big hitter. He's just gone into Sector 2 and he's half a tenth down his lap. So I think Matt Tibos can definitely improve in that final sector. But yeah, Dan the Man is not going to get pole, so thank God for those stats not getting further away from me. So come on. But yeah, Matt Tibos then, is just under a tenth down as Jean does retire. Improves to P5, so not too bad for him there in this session. But what is Matt Tibos going to do? Is he going to be up on his time? He's now a quarter of a tenth down, so he is improved.
Oh,
he's also spawned. He's also spawned, and yeah, that's qualifying over with.
Well, we've seen a lot of drivers come a cropper in that corner. Are we going to see similar happen in the race, potentially? Jake Davies moves up to 11th place, and Jordan can't improve on 13th. But Softy, as you mentioned there, 2 big hitters falling foul at the same corner. That's a bit ominous, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think their setups are quite oversteery then with the lack of downforce by the looks of it, because you wouldn't normally expect them to lose it that easy, and the fact that 2 drivers did it within a few seconds of each other is interesting. Again, setup-wise, you want to run as little as little downforce as physically you can get away with around here, but you don't want to run it too low. Otherwise, you're going to struggle in those final 2 corners specifically. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, well, we certainly saw that in action just then. So let's give you a rundown then of the qualifying grid order. So New Zealand Cam takes another pole position, hasn't taken a race win yet this season. He'll be hoping that he can change that today, with Dan the Man lining up on the front row with him. Then we've got Matt Tibos in P3 with Phil Barswell in 4th. Jean-Luc Taylor is P5 with Alistair Bain starting next to him in 6th. Dan Morris got pushed down to 7th in the end with Jack Pearson in 8th. Dom Smith just making it inside the top 10 with reigning TGP1 champion Jack Hickey in P10. 11th place went to Jake Davies with 12th going to court. 13th, ERT Jordan, Magic Poop Cannon, 14th. And Mr. Chiapelli rounding out the runners and riders in 15th. So, Softy, what should we be looking for in this race? Apart from hopefully Phil Bardwell not repeating what he has done in many Austria races gone past and take out Jack Hickey. But what should we be looking for in terms of strategy, in terms of pit stops? How are drivers going to approach this one, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, no safety car. Obviously, I think there's no safety car races for the rest of the season, so you'd expect it's quite cloudy out there. So I think there was a 15% chance of rain for this race. But yeah, I definitely think mediums to soft is still the better strategy, as pretty much always. It's just a case of whether you can keep that pace on those slightly harder tyres. But I think a lot of people will go for that. It's going to be interesting, but it's just a case of just keeping sort of calm, looking at the tyres. New Zealand Cam is starting on the mediums. Dan, Matt Tibos, Phil so far on the softs. 5th to 7th mediums. Jack Pearson softs. Dom Smith 9th on mediums, Jack Hickey and JD on softs, and then the remaining cars behind him on the mediums.
Well, let's see how we get on then in the mountains in Austria. We got 4, now 5 lights in Spielberg, and we're underway, and it's a good start from Cam. Dan didn't get away very well, but Phil Barswell certainly did. And on the run up to turn 1 then, Phil's trying to find a way past Matt Tibos. Dan the Man comes over to cover that off, and the top 4, as they were through turn 1, we've got a wide McLaren in the background. That's Jake Davies, and as they head the way up the hill, now it's Matt Tibos who's on the attack for Dan the Man. Heading up the hill, Cam's got it sus, but Dan the Man's under pressure from the Alpine. The Alpine sent it to the inside, and Dan the Man's late, and Dan the Man almost sent spinning round. He's inside Matt Tibos at the moment, and Cam got away with that one, but now Matt Tibos has got a fantastic run, and on the run down to turn number 4, Cam has gone defensive on the inside. Matt Tibos is going to try and go the long way round, is he? They bang wheels, he's trying to hold it around the outside on the soft tyres. He's got the traction, and he's got the lead of the race. The Alpine, from starting on 3rd position, he got an awful start in comparison, but now finds himself leading the race, with Dan the Man now dropping behind Phil Bardwell.
Yeah, very unlucky there. I think Dan was so focused on Matt Tibos there that he didn't realise where Cam was, and sort of had to go up the inside, sort of barged him, and that actually then Constantine allowed Matt Tibos to get a run on the exit of turn 3 up into turn 4. So unfortunate for Cam there. I don't think he'd be too happy, but Matt Tibos is on those soft tyres where Cam is on the mediums. So I think Cam just needs to play that long game and sort of save his ears and just sort of keep it neat and tidy. But Phil is on those softs, and I think he'll attack New Zealand Cam as soon as he gets that opportunity.
Yeah, further back, we've got a spinner in the background. That's Dan Morris. Meanwhile, we've got Jack Hickey making a place on Mr. Chiapelli, who himself made up quite a few places on that opening tour. Alistair Bain lost quite a lot. He's down in 9th place, so not the start he would have wanted. Jake Davies up to 6th place, despite being off and wide at the end of turn 1. But Mr. Chiapelli coming back at the reigning GP1 champion of Jack Hickey. And as they make their way down now to turn number 4, Hickey covers it. Chiapelli thinks about it, but for the moment they stay as they are. And now Court looks like he could be in a position to make some inroads on that Alpha Tauri. Meanwhile, back towards the front, we're now watching Jack Pearson and Jake Davies. Jack Pearson running a little bit wide there, just about getting away with it, not going onto the gravel in his pursuit of Jake Davies. We've got Phil Bargewell. Phil Bargewell's off and around, and he's hit the wall. And from 3rd place, the Mercedes driver has found himself out of the race. He doesn't even get an opportunity to crash into Jack Hickman because he's done that one by himself.
Yeah, I don't think Phil Bargewell's had a very good season, to be honest, and yeah, he didn't even get a chance to crash into Jack Hickey this time. Although you're saying that, he crashed and probably was trying to DNF, and then Jack Hickey comes around the corner and smashes into him. So, you never know with Phil Bargewell, but the gap at the front.
Meanwhile, Softy at the front. Yes, look at the front. We've got Cam all over Matt Tibos now, and are those medium tyres going to start working? And he's clipped the back of the Alpine there. That's not going to do his front wing any good. Cam's been in the wars a little bit so far the start of this race, but he's got the DRS now on the run down to turn number 4. He's not quite close enough. Matt Tibos does just about enough, but Dan the man, also within a second of these two, is going to have DRS himself. And to a certain degree, it's quite bad news what's happened to Phil there for Matt Tibos, because he was kind of a buffer also on those soft tyres, and if he could have had a go at Matt Tibos, at New Zealand Cam, then he could have provided a little bit of backup in this soft versus medium tyre race that we've sort of ended up going with.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Phil because, as you say there, it would have been quite interesting. But that's obviously good news for Dan. One less car to overtake. And actually, Dan getting a bit of oversteer on that final corner, so that's cost him a bit of time. But here we go then. Cam, he's going to think about it. He's not going to overtake into turn 1. It would be pretty silly there. He's going to wait for the DRS and probably get him onto this main straight. Just ensure that you get a good exit. It's a perfect exit. DRS wide open. He's got 98% as opposed to Matt Tibos' 63. And he's going to go around the outside. It's actually easier to overtake around the outside and stay on the racing line into this turn 2. Because if you're up the inside, it's very easy to just not physically be able to turn. But yep, Matt Tibos there obviously losing that position, and he needs to be careful because Dan is not too far behind. But Dan needs to win these races. Jack Pearson has actually just overtaken JD for 5th place with the straight line speed and DRS there. So Jack Pearson somehow not got a penalty yet, and he's up to P5.
Yep, giving a good account of himself at the moment. The man from Haywards Heath up into 5th place as Dan the man gets a bit squirrely coming towards the end of, I think that's turn 6. Oh, and Matt Tibos is round! Matt Tibos is round! He's kept it out of the wall, but he's in the gravel and he's tumbling down the order. The man who was leading the race up until a few corners ago now finds himself in P12 with gravel on his tyres, and the soft tyres do not like being spun around on these sorts of surfaces. Jake Davies has gone into the pits. I think we're going to see Matt Tibos. Surely he's going to do the same. Yes, he is. And you would have thought now, Softy, his only choice is the hard tyres.
I mean, potentially you could potentially go to the mediums. Your tyres will be pretty shot relative to to everyone else at the end of the race. But we saw that in qualifying on that final lap. He did the exact same thing. So the fact that Matt Tibos has done it is New Zealand Cam gets a bit wide into turn 2 there, but doesn't gain or lose any time to Dan the man. But the fact that Matt Tibos has done that, I think potentially Dan needs to be careful because he also did that in qualifying.
But Softy, let's not forget, we also saw him do that in Monza when he was on the road in the lead of the race and still hadn't pitted. So, although we're seeing these sorts of performances come back to Matt Tibos, he's starting to mix it back at the front again, which is what we want to see. Former TGP1 champion, let's not forget, he just needs to cut out these little mistakes, doesn't he?
He does, yeah, and this is a thing. It's a shame because the past 3 seasons Matt Tibos has just dropped off a cliff in terms of pace, and it's a shame because he's one of the cleanest drivers on the grid, as we see a few penalties there. So it's good that he's gaining that pace back, and I actually think, apparently I heard, and again I don't know how true it is, we'll have to wait and see, as Jack Hickey is now ahead of Jack Pearson going into turn 1 there, as Jack Hickey's actually made a bit of a mistake there. Yeah, and Jack Pearson's actually collected him in the back there, but that's going to be a good opportunity for Mr. Chiapelli that's right behind. He's going to have that momentum. He's going to go up the inside of turn 2. He's thinking about it, up the inside of Jack Pearson. He needs to be very careful not to outbreak himself and hit Jack Hickey in, or up the inside there, a bit of wheel banging, but nothing too serious, and that is Mr. Chiapelli up to P5, and potentially he's going to get Jack Hickey here. He is. He's using all of his erts. He's only on 8% erts. Jack Hickey was defensive there. Very late, but very fair there, and Mr. Chiapelli thinking around the outside, but Jack Hickey is just going to run him out of road just a bit, and surprisingly, them both made it through clean there. But I think Jack Hickey, there we go, Mr. Chiapelli did obviously back off there. He's
been hit by Pearson!
Jack
Twice!
Pearson hit him!
My goodness me!
I don't think he'll be happy there, but yeah, Jack Pearson's mistake. And we actually caught there going a bit wide, and this is going to allow Alistair Bain a bit of a run, but Alistair sort of stays behind there. I think Court is probably running a bit less downforce than
Pearson
there we go then. So yeah, understandable. I think is the only real choice he's got, to be honest. But yeah, unfortunate there for I'd say Mr. Chiapelli, and well, actually yeah, Mr. Chiapelli really, isn't it? Because yeah, an easy mistake to make there, but that doesn't make it any easier.
Well, it's a shame. Both of them are running good races, really, and they could have ended up with good results. Both former TGP2 champions, both competed for a title in TGP2 as well, let's not forget. But today not being their days, but it doesn't really seem like anybody really wants to do well in this race. Getting into various instances, Matt Tibos sets the fastest lap of the race. Down in P13, Jack Pearson has now left the pits. But not really the sort of race that he would have wanted. So, Softy, we've had quite a mixed-up order now, considering how this started. We've had Phil out of the race, Jack Pearson down there, Matt Tibbers down there, Jake, who had a good start and dropped down there now. But meanwhile, at the front, still Cam and Dan.
It is, yeah. Obviously, 7 attempts there, so obviously Cam's doing what he needs to. Dan's doing what he needs to, but I think he'll be wanting a bit more there. But what I was about to say before, obviously all that action kicked off was, Matt Tibos is showing a lot of his pace. He's getting it back on form, but I don't know if it's true or not. But apparently he's turned full TC. Opposed to I think medium or off, which he was running previously. So a few drivers have actually done that in TGP this season because they feel it makes them faster, and if it is true, then it's clearly working for Matt Tibos.
Well, we're going to cut away from the live pictures at the moment as we got Phil Bargewell in the interview pen. Phil, obviously not where you wanted to be at this stage in the race. It was looking so good in the early couple of exchanges. Just tell us quite what happened.
So, coming into turn 7, I was like a little bit wide. I was on the curb, but nothing drastic. Started to turn right as you do, and then the back end of the car went. Couldn't correct it in time, had the softest contact with the wall, and my wheel goes flying off. I was like, what on earth is that? And that just sums up my luck in the past literally 8 races. I think I've had no luck at all.
Well, we mentioned that in the commentary that the last few races you haven't really been on a very good run of form. How does a result like this affect you mentally? Now looking into Hungary, it's a track to a certain degree that has similarities to this. It's quite a technical circuit, but are you going to have the confidence in the rear end of your car now after what's just happened in this race?
Honestly, I haven't got it's more unpredictable than the weather, it seems, in the UK. It's just pathetic, man. Oh, Dan gets really close there, sorry. If you want to jump into that, Mike.
No, go, carry on. You're far more important than Dan the man.
It's so unpredictable, and here I had a better chance, probably my best chance. Good qualifying, felt I had decent pace to keep up with the top lot, and here I am chatting to you guys. So, no offence, I'd rather be racing than chatting to you.
All right, no offence taken. So Phil, obviously just to finish off then, what can we expect to see from you in Hungary? Can you come back?
I hope so. I'm probably see me after lap 4 probably. Yeah. No, hopefully I'll get at least a points finish. I need something to change.
Well, it's very good. Thank you very much for joining us, Phil. Phil Bargewell, ladies and gentlemen, retired on lap 2 from 3rd place in the race and joining us in the commentary box. Meanwhile, back to the fight at the front. Phil Bargewell mentioned it. He's watching the action. So are we, because we're seeing Dan the man all over the back of New Zealand Cam. The Aston Martin driver has got red stained in his mirrors, and it's the red of Dan the man who can smell a race victory, can smell his prey. And Softy, surely in a minute, he'll be making an attack.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting ever so slightly closer and closer each lap, but I would say just coming up to this left-right chicane in a moment, on the last lap, Dan actually got a bit of an oversteer moment, so he's definitely on the ragged edge of trying to push those tyres, push his limits, and is he going to do this corner a lot better as Cam gets a bit wide through there? Much better from Dan there, but yeah, he just needs to keep it clean. Dan has 81% ERS with Cam on 79, so they're pretty much even on that ERS deployment, really, so, I think it is going to be a fight all race long. I think Cam gets a bit of a better exit out of that last corner, but DRS is wide open. I think Dan probably will try and attack into turn 2 this lap, and is actually sort of using a bit more of an inside line there. You want to try and avoid that entry curve into turn 1 because it can unsettle your car, and it looks like Cam's got a much better exit out of that first corner.
Could we see Dan trying the undercut, perhaps?
I would say so. I think Dan's got nothing to lose. Yeah, he's right behind Cam, but you may as well try. I think tyre wear around here. You'd think it's not that severe. I know on previous games it's been quite bad, but I think they're both going to be fine. I reckon in terms of that. But yeah, you may as well try the undercut if you're the car behind, because that could be the difference between getting past someone and potentially not. Especially with how hard it is to clearly for Dan the Man to overtake round this circuit at the minute.
I think he's actually dropped off a little bit from Cam there.
Yeah.
Are we going to see either of them heel
right?
Oh, he dummied. He dummied, didn't he, Softy?
He did, and obviously, and again, in rule in TGP, as I think a lot of leagues, you have to be within the white lines on pit entry. I think it's always been a rule that people tend not to really follow. But yeah, if you're over the white line, as we saw a few seasons ago with me in the final week, as Dan gets very close into turn 1 there, you will get a penalty. So yeah, guys, make sure you do enter and exit the pits as Alistair Bain moves up to P4 as Court and Jean are in the pits there. But yeah, Dan the Man not able to really attack, it seems, at the moment. I think maybe running a bit more downforce.
Yeah, possibly so. He seems a bit close to this lap, but you're right. It does just seem as if Cam's got that slight edge on him in the straight line and just able to pull clear. So it's worth noting there's only 4 drivers, as you can see on the graphic on the left-hand side there, who haven't come into the pit so far. They are your top 4 presently, which include, obviously, these 2 that we're watching now, making these medium tyres go as long as they can, and then having those nice sticky softs for the last stint of the race. But are we going to see either of the top 2, maybe both of the top 2, or none of them? We've got one. It's the race leader and Dan. Both of them are coming into the pits then. This will be it. It's the battle of the pit mechanics in this race, and surely, Softy, we're going to see them come out as they are, unless barring any major damage or misjudgment.
Yeah, that's correct. I think Cam probably will pull out of it ever so small, bit more of a gap over Dan. I think that's just the natural way it is when it comes to exiting the pits, and then you've got the long straight, which probably is going to exacerbate that gap slightly more. But they are pretty close, about even Stevens, as Alistair's also in the pits, and Dan Morris is in the pits. So the top 4 then, as we were just mentioning, and now all making that pit stop. But how is their exits going to be? It's very easy to actually lose the rear end on that pit exit. But yeah, I think it's about the same at the minute. Dan does actually have DRS still on New Zealand Cam, so that's going to help him slightly. But yeah, half a second gap then. So I think they'll be a bit ginger on this first lap just to ensure they get the tyre temperatures.
Can I just point out very quickly before you carry on? There was a lot of...
Dan Morris has just hit the pit exit. Sorry there, Phil, continue.
Yeah, there was a lot of complaints from the party, from drivers. The soft tyres were not good and were going off pretty quickly. I'm not saying it was the reason for my crash, but there was a lot of complaints from certain, a few drivers in the other party, that the soft tyres, after 3 or 4 laps, were crying enough already. So they're not being brilliant so far.
No, that is very interesting, to be honest, and I can sort of see that. They are very soft round here, but yeah, again, I think the medium tyres is definitely the better race. The race type seems to be getting a bit wide on the entry to that final corner, and Dan the Man is a lot closer now. But is he going to get that exit? He just needs to try and line up, square off that exit of turn 1, avoid that inside curve. But he seems to attack it as we've got a yellow flag. I think Matt Tibos has spun again. Yes, he has at the penultimate corner. But Dan the Man, here he goes then, down the outside, or down the outside, around the outside. And actually, New Zealand Cam backs off there, but now he's trying to come back up on the inside. So I'm not too sure why he sort of backed off so early and then decided to try and go for it. So that is now Dan the Man up into P1, and now he's got a 5/10th gap. So it's going to be interesting to see really if Cam can come back again. Dan has actually got only 33% ERS, where Cam's got 73. So Cam has definitely been saving it a bit more these past few laps, and since coming out of the pits, whereas Dan has been sort of wanting to use more of it. But it's a 6/10th gap at the minute, so it's going to be interesting. He needs to not make a mistake, Dan, because the potential slim chance of the championship is on the line. So he just needs to keep it nice and clean. And at the minute, Dan has got 2 warnings to New Zealand Cam's 0. So one more warning for Dan, and that's going to be a penalty. And realistically, that will be the race win, done and dusted. So we'll see how it produces in the next few laps.
super move by Dan the Man, committed round the outside, knew what he had to do, knew what he needed to get done, and he made Cam try and second guess whether he should launch it himself, but decided against it in the end. They got very close, but Cam now coming back at Dan the Man, and look at this, he's almost pushing him on that back straight. He's got the DRS open, he's not using his earth for the moment, but Cam might fancy a go onto the inside into turn number 4. Does he do it? No, with 3.5 laps to go, he plays it safe for the moment and decides that being just behind Dan is a good place to be just at this time. Meanwhile, behind, Jack Hickey got ahead of Jake Davies. Nearly got a second gap back to him at the moment. Matt Tibos did go for a spin as Dan the Man almost goes for a spin himself there. There's some interesting battles going on throughout the field, but there's no doubt that the closest battle on track at the moment is the one we want to see. It's the leading pair. It's Dan the Man, second in the championship. He can close the points gap to the Confessor considerably if the results end like this. Phil Bargewell has noted to us how the drivers in the other party, in the racing party, were complaining about these soft tyres. Jean-Luc Taylor is third place. He's lost 2 seconds since he pitted. Dan the Man gets a little bit squirrely on the exit of turn number 1, and this could be Cam's opportunity. Rising up the hill, he moves to the inside. Dan squeezes him as much as he can. Cam's late on the brakes, and he gets through into the lead of the race. And can Dan the Man fight back? On the back straight now. He's going to have the DRS himself. Heading down to turn number 4. Are we going to see a repeat of a move? Cam goes defensive. Dan's going to have to go the long way round. He's late on the brakes. He's trying to go the long way round. They almost bag wheels. Dan keeps him within the white lines. And on the run out of turn number 4, Cam has the speed to just about stay in the lead.
He does, yeah, but Dan was using a lot of his earth to try and defend. And Dan has got a penalty, so there we go. Got a bit of a squirrely moment through there, and then that just pushes him over that line, and a penalty for him. So Cam just needs to keep it neat and tidy now. It's going to be very difficult to pull away, but as long as he stays within that 3 seconds. But yeah, I can see actually what Cam was doing. Cam was trying to get the detection point that previous lap into turn 2, just to ensure that he gets the DRS, but it didn't quite play out there, so Dan got that one. But yeah, it was very nice race in between the two. They're giving them each enough room, but not more than the other needs to.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's what we like to see. We're on the penultimate lap. It's Aston Martin from Ferrari. The Ferrari would desperately like to be in that race winning position for the points gap. We've got Matt Tibos, who's finally retired from the race. He's had plenty of incidents, but look at this. Dan the Man is right behind Aston Martin. As they head down the hill now towards turn number 4, Cam goes super defensive. Dan's going to go the long way around again, but no, he tries to do the cutback, and Cam's got a little bit deep, and Dan's got good traction. The Ferrari pulling up alongside, but at the moment, that Aston Martin just has an extra couple of kph to keep himself ahead of the Ferrari.
Oh, fucking Dan getting a lot of squirrely moments there. It's very scary in those corners. I think potentially Dan may have either overcooked his tyres or potentially running a bit too much tyre pressure there. But and there we go again. So close. He needs to be very careful. It's the last lap. You may not win, but just don't crash, for the love of God.
Well, let's have a look. Dan the Man, just half a second behind. Cam knows that even if Dan gets past him, it's going to be very hard for him to actually go on and win the race. These two, barring any major dramas, are going to be your top 2 race finishers, even with that penalty being applied to Dan. Further back, Alistair Bain just 3.5 tenths behind Court Gill, but we are focusing on the battle for the lead, on Dan the Man trying to get past Cam. He was able to do it just after the pit stops with Cam with a clever move, made his way back past his magic poop cannons out further back, but Dan the Man has gone! Oh, and he nearly went into the back of Cam there, and I was about to say he's probably had his final real opportunity of an overtaking spot. And, well, he very nearly ended up the back of the Aston Martin, let alone getting past him. But Softy, Cam has driven just the way he needed to this race, and he's managed it, and he's going to take his first race win of the season, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're fair play to Newton Cam, he's done everything he needs to. Obviously, cut out those mistakes this race. Held off the pressure from Dan the Man, and he's going to get rewarded with a win there.
Yep, around the final corner, it's Aston Martin, it's Cam who takes the race victory. Dan the Man in this title pursuit comes home P2. He won't be too disappointed with that in the grand scheme of things. Jean-Luc Taylor comes home in P3. Good race for him. Jack Hickey, a fantastic recovery in the end to end up in P4. Court Gill did in the end get past Alistair Bain for 5th. Alistair Bain is then 6th. Jake Davies, P7. Dom Smith comes across the line, P7 after Jake's penalty. Jack Pearson is going to come across the line 9th. And we'll finish 9th with Dan Morris coming across in 10th. Mr. Chiapelli then comes across in P11, and we're just waiting for Jordan in P12. Worth noting as well, Jack Pearson not guaranteed to finish there, as I imagine there's going to be some discussion in the stewards bit about him and Chiapelli and the incident they had earlier on in the race. So, Softy, what a race we were treated to. It was tight battle out the front, wasn't it? And we were treated to some good battles within that as well. It wasn't just easy overtakes. They weren't just following each other. Jack Hickey picked up driver of the day, but both of them giving it a good shot for that win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Austria, in terms of driving it, it's a bit boring because how simple it is. But in terms of racing it, it does produce relatively decent races because of, again, how hard it is to really pull away if you're similar on pace and you don't make any mistakes, as we saw obviously the entire race at the back, with the battle of the front. So yeah, I mean it was a great race. I'm glad that New Zealand Cam won. I think he was definitely deserved, and it definitely looked like Dan was a bit on the ragged edge a number of times that race where Cam was just sort of keeping it neat and tidy, and yeah, he got rewarded with that win. We're fortunate for Matt Tibos. I think he could have been fighting for that win also with these two, but unfortunately for him, it didn't quite work out.
Yeah, well, it's disappointing for him in the end, but someone who's not disappointed is Cam, who takes his first race win of the season, and he'll be jolly delighted with that one, it must be said. Dan the man finishing in P2, Jean P3 having started 5th on the grid. Jack Hickey, as we said, good recovery from him in 4th after starting P10 and got driver of the day. Then we had Court P5, Alistair Bain P6, Dom Smith in 7th with Jake Davies P8. Jack Pearson, currently speaking, is 9th. Dan Morris rounds out the top 10 with just a Chiapelli 11th. ERT Jordan 12th, and then our non-finishers. Magic Poop Cannon crashed with a couple of laps to go. Matt Tibos crashed with a couple of laps to go, and Phil Bardwell crashed after barely a couple of laps. So, Softy, interesting first race of the night. We've got a very different track, which does have some similarities to Austria to a certain degree, but what should we expect to see from Hungary, and who, if anybody, needs to come out swinging?
Yes, I'd say quite a different circuit. Obviously, low downforce for Austria and very high downforce for Hungary. I think the people that I think need to come out swinging, I think Dan the Man will be eager to get that win. He was so close in that race that we just saw, but didn't quite get it. I think Matt Tibos as well. The fact that he knows, right, I've sort of picked up the pace. I know I've got the pace to fight for podiums and fight for wins on occasion. I think Matt Tibos will know, right, come on, this is my chance. Get on pole. It's hard to. It's not as easy as it used to be around Hungary. So I think he'll be wanting to try and improve. And there's a few drivers there. I think Jean got a podium there. He'll be wanting to do what he did in that first race. Jack Hickey, a good recovery driver. I think he'll be wanting to qualify much higher up to begin with, so he can be fighting for that win and the podium. But I just don't think he quite has the pace at the minute. So there's a few drivers that I think will need to improve. But yeah, I mean, Hungary is not an easy circuit to one, overtake, and two, to drive. You've got turn 4, that uphill left-hander. Very easy to hit the curb wrong. You spin out. That's pretty much your race done and dusted. Because chances are you can hit a wall. Same with the middle sector as well. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Very easy to get your lines wrong. So setup is key. You want to run as max downforce as possible, but you also really want to run as little downforce as possible to regen your ERS. Again, it's very difficult around here because of the high downforce, but also the only real overtaking spot is turn 1, turn 2, and then sometimes into turn 4. So it'll be interesting to see. You never know. We've not even talked about the weather. It could very well be wet or mixed conditions. So I think a lot of drivers probably will be hoping that that's not the case.
I'll let you know before I go.
Well, Phil Bargewell, quick thought before you do go. What are we expecting to see from you in this race?
I'm not confident around here, but sometimes that's misplaced, and I end up doing a good qualifying in a very decent race. But the way my luck's going, I'll probably be in the wall by the end of lap 4. Hopefully, I just need to finish a race and decently. That's all I need. Incident free.
Yeah. Well, Phil, we certainly hope you have a good race. It's good to see you fighting at the front. And just lastly, before you do go for qualifying, how does it feel surviving a race around Austria without hitting Jack Hickey?
I'm disappointed. My annual rear-ending Hickey well, it came to an end last season, but it was not a chance to happen this season. So it's always next season, though.
There is always next season. Phil Barswell, we look forward to seeing you out on track in just a few moments. Thank you very much for taking the time to join with us, and good luck for the race.
Thank you, boys.
So, Softy, we've got 17 and a half minutes to go in qualifying. Dan the Man, as we know, has taken another 19 points out of the Confessor's title lead. But does he have to do similar to what he did last week in Monza and take this race by the scruff of the neck and just disappear up the road? Does he have to do that, or can he afford to have a little bit of a battle, or does he really need to get his head down and go?
I mean, naturally, when there's a championship at stake, you just want to get out in the lead, pull a gap, run your own race. Don't get as far ahead of people that can cause you issues as possible, and then just get to the end of the race and get the win. But it's never as easy as that. You always hope that that's the case, but you never know other people's pace, other people's consistency. You never know. Dan might qualify P6, P7 at this race. It's Dan has been a bit inconsistent, over the past few seasons, really, I'd say, in terms of his pace from one race to the next. So Dan will be hoping that he's there. I think he will be. He should realistically be up there with with the drivers that we've got on the grid. But he needs to do all he can. Again, it's still a long shot that winning the championship and fighting for the championship. But P2, it's not so bad at Austria. He would have definitely wanted the P1 for those extra points. But you can only do what you can do in the end of the season. What happens will happen. So he's just got to do what he can and not crash.
Well, I've said certainly that last point will be high on his list. He hasn't had too many incidents, though, this season, Dan. Actually, thinking about it, I can't really recall him having a DNF. Don't quote me on that, but I think he's been relatively consistent in terms of getting to the finish line, Softy, but there has been the odd race where he just hasn't been able to do the job. Obviously, he's taken 2 race wins this season, coming at Monza last week, of course, and Netherlands, that first race, round number 9, where Shane had an incident. So he's been there or thereabouts, it must be said. He's been no slouch, but at the same time, perhaps just hasn't always had the outright pace.
He's not, no, and I think that's been a characteristic of him for a long time. Since he sort of rejoined TGP1 a good number of seasons ago. Again, I do believe it's the fact that he runs, I think medium or full TC. Different circuits and different characteristics will either benefit or hamper him. So, and it's the same with a lot of drivers, but. I think he's got the skill, no question about it. He's a multiple TGP1 champion. I think it's 3 titles that he's got. So he can, he's got the skill to do it. It's just whether he's got the outright pace to do it and the look that's needed. As we see Matt Tibos doing a 16.7 there, but it'll be interesting to see. I think he should be able to do it, but he just needs that little bit extra luck.
Yeah, well, we'll see if that little bit extra luck comes in this race or not. We're watching Cam now through the final corner. Interesting to note that Jean did that first lap time of his on the medium tyres. I believe Matt Tibbets was on the softs. Cam's certainly on the softs, and he goes over 0.4 of a second quicker than Matt Tibble. Speaking of Dan the Man, he's currently on a lap at the moment. Softy just coming through sector 1. Let's ride on board with the Ferrari driver. Take us round the remaining bit of the track at the Hungary.
Yep, so through this long right-hander, he's got a car obviously ahead of him, can be very distracted and gets out of the way, but he does miss the apex there at the chicane. Very easy to just lose time through there, either braking too early, riding the curve. And here we go, the right, left, right. You just want to take as much speed as you actually get bits of oversteer there, as much speed through these corners as physically possible. There's not really right, keep it in 6th gear, pin the throttle as soon as you hit that apex. And here we go, the third to last corner. Ride all the curves on the left as well on the exit. And here we go, this left-hander, very easy to lock up your car and your tyres and run wide. It does it quite nice. You want to get into the pit entry there just to take the momentum through and keep a tight line through this final corner. Short shift if you need to, get on the power, get on the DRS. And here we go then, and Dan the Man crosses the line and does a 16.4. I do believe, if I am not mistaken, TGP pole last season by the Confessor, was a 15.8. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that. I'm going to say Pole will be a 16.0 as Jack Hickey. There we go. So he's improved, so that's always a positive. So I don't think he'll be qualifying as low down as he did in the last race. But yeah, I reckon Pole will probably be a 16.0. I'd just probably say maybe. It's Dan the Man. Oh, Dan the Man losing it at turn 4. Then that could have been very bad for him there, getting on the curb, spinning, and nearly ending in the barrier there. But yeah, I'd say 16.0, 16.1 is what Pole will be.
Well, we shall but see. Dan the Man is just very lucky there to escape without serious issues. So hopefully we will see him improving up from 3rd place at the moment. Jack Hickey, great time from Jack Hickey. He's only 16 thousandths of a second faster than Cam, so it is very close at the front, although there's a 2 after Jack Hickey's 16 and a 3 after Cam's. There's not much separating that 2 and 3, it must be said. Magic Poop Cannon, the only driver on a fast lap at the moment, just making his way around turn number 1, DRS Open. Also competing in TGP2 this season, as well as a couple of other drivers who've taken part in TGP1. Jake Davies has taken part in some TGP2 races, as has Wet Lemons, who isn't racing tonight. But Magic Poop Cannon there, perhaps using this race as a bit of a warm-up for TGP2 tomorrow night, but he's not going to want to do the same line he's just done through turn 4 as he's just done there, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, obviously not the greatest lines. I think it's very hard on a pad to try and be as smooth as you can. It's something you've really got to try and learn and focus on. You can lose so much time just by not being smooth and sort of hacksawing at the wheel and stuff. If you get the lines wrong, that's just lap time you're just wasting there. But yeah, Magic Poop Cannon probably is using TGP1 and same with Wet Lemons and JD, just to sort of get a bit of experience before the main event for them, which is Wednesday nights for TGP2. But either way, they still want to do very well, and we saw JD in that last race did extremely well in comparison to where he's been previously.
Yeah, Magic Poop Cannon then moving up to P2. We've got New Zealand Cam, who I think is just about to start a lap. Yes, so let's see how the Aston Martin driver gets on. Let's ride on board then with the race winner from Austria, his first race win of the season. He crosses the line. He's got a 1 minute 16.292 to beat, and we're going to find out over the next minute and a bit whether he can do that. So nice and tidy through turn number 1 there, clips the apex well, gets on the DRS and the power very well as he drops down the hill towards turn number 2. Now the corner seems to go on forever, and he keeps it nice and tight through there as well, Softy. And in the first couple of tricky corners, it's looking good for the Aston Martin driver.
It is, yeah, nice and smooth. That's all he needs to do is actually just under his previous sector 1. So it's looking smooth, and that's what you need to be. You need to try and be smooth around here. Brake as soon as the curb starts. Try and hit those apexes in that chicane, but don't hit those sausage curbs, as it will spit you out and unsettle the car. And here we go, these right, left, right. They seem to go on forever, one after the other, but it seems nice and smooth here. And here we go, coming up to the 3rd sector. Is he going to be up on his time? He's nearly 2/10 up, so this currently will be a 16.1, potentially a 16.0, depending on how he does this final few corners. Takes a later apex through here, gets on the power nice and early, and then he's going to take a nice and neat, tidy, tight line, and he does. Short shift, get on the power, DRS open, and what is he going to do? It's going to be a 16.1 then, so goes a decent improvement onto provisional pole.
Yep, Jack Hickey's just rounding the final corner, about to start a lap. But Jean-Luc Taylor, now with the soft tyres equipped, goes on to the front row, joining Cam up there, the Williams driver, finding a bit of pace around the Hungaro ring. We have got then Jack Hickey making his way into turn number 1. He's got a 16.115 to beat 2/10. Would do enough to put him back onto provisional pole, but I would have thought, Softy, he's going to want to find a little bit more than that. I know you said you reckon pole time to be a 16.0 at the moment, but we're awfully close to that. We've still got 8 minutes to go. Could we see a driver get into the 15s?
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely possible. These drivers that are at the front are, for the most part, TGP champions. Obviously, Jean, Jack Hickey, Dan, Matt Tibos, all TGP1 champions. Obviously, New Zealand Cam a multiple race winner now after the seasons that he's done. So, it's absolutely possible. We are very close. All you need to do is hit the lines right, take the momentum through the corners, and you can gain a significant amount of time. So, Jack Hickey's only just just over a tenth and a half off the pole, but at the minute it's going to be about a tenth off, depending if he gains any more time in this final sector. Very easy just to ruin your lap in these final corners. Very easy to lose the rear end. But is Jack Hickey going to improve? He is going to improve on his lap, and he should go into P3. He actually gets a bit of oversteer there, and that's it. That's him done. And luckily, he did not DNF his car in qualifying there. But yeah, he's going to want to get back to the pits ASAP.
Yeah, that's not gone very well for Jack Hickey at all. As you said, he was improving, so it would have been an improvement. And he almost very nearly had an incident there with Alistair Bain, I think it was. Alistair just starting a lap, I think he was. So Jack's car just unghosting at the worst possible moment. Dan the Man isn't finding any time. He's 2 seconds down on his personal best. Phil Bargewell. Yeah, I think you're right. Phil Bargewell improved up to P5 during all of that melee as well. Matt Tibos is coming around the final corner now to start a flying lap. So Dan the Man is about to start a flying lap. So let's keep an eye on Matt Tibos then. Race winner in Singapore after a fantastic final lap manoeuvre on Dan the Man. And the Alpine driver is going to fancy his chances again, Softy. He needs to cut out those mistakes though, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. I mean, he's got the pace. We all know he's got the pace. He's always had the pace. It's just the consistency and the mistakes are costing him a lot. And I think maybe if it is true that he has, as it's nearly 2.5 tenths up there, but if it is true that he's turned TC on, then maybe that's just what he needed. Maybe it's just he didn't have the confidence with getting on the power in the rear end, which is understandable because there's not very good force feedback on the F1 game, sadly. So please to God improve it, Coders. But he's currently a decent amount up on his time, so that should probably improve him depending on how his sectors are into probably the top four, but coming through into the final sector now is a tenth and a half up, so that'll improve him only one position at the moment. But Dan the Man, what is Dan the Man doing coming into this third sector? So he's improving. He's a tenth and a half up apparently, so that should put him third place, so gaining one position there also. But Matt Tibos then around the final corner, he's spun. So let's see if Dan the Man spins as well, because that's what seemed to happen in that last session. No, Dan the Man does not spin. He nearly does though, actually. He nearly does. He got a bit of oversteer there. So I think if you watch these two, they're probably going to both make the same mistake as they did that last session. But yeah, Dan the Man going into P2, then only a tenth and just over a tenth and a quarter off provisional pole. Yeah,
these two seem determined to anything you can do, I can do better type scenario, it seems. So they're going to want to iron that out before their final runs. Speaking of final runs, Jean-Luc Taylor is on an outlap at the moment, so he's going quite early, Softy. That's quite interesting. Why do you think Jean would be doing that?
I think it's just get the lap in. Everyone else is in the pits. It's very easy to get distracted around here with how sort of short the lap is and how tight and twisty it is. So you just want to get the lap done and dusted. Obviously the tyre evolution is a thing. It's not a massive difference, but you want to be as late out as possible, but you don't want to just risk ruining your lap by getting traffic, as we see a car on the pit exit there. That can very easily distract someone if they're not too careful, but John does turn one nicely.
Yep, John then currently P3 was for a moment at least on the front row with Cam before Dan's lap went in. Dan beating him by just 0.08 of a second. So John then rising up the hill, and we're going to get our first understanding of where he is and his personal best, and it is a personal best through Sector 1. 85 thousandths of a second better than his previous best. And with just 2 sectors to go, Softy, how hard can it be?
Very hard, very hard. It's very easy to ruin your lap in this sector. You get the curb wrong, it spins you out. You run wide, it spins you out or invalidates you. You get the line wrong and you just lose that momentum. So it's very important, and it seems like he's took that very nicely here, and he's now 2 tenths up. So he's on for a provisional pole time at this moment in time. So we'll see where he can go into these final few corners. But while you're riding on board with John, I'm going to ride on board with New Zealand Cam, just see what he does in this first
John's
sector.
pitted.
He's pitted, has he? That's unusual. I think he's probably thinking, you know what, I may as well pit and just get a fresh set of tyres on for that one final run. But if I was John, I'd have probably continued that lap just to ensure that you get the lap in, really. But New Zealand Cam then is apparently just under a tenth up on his current pole position time, so he's making that improvement. But is it going to be enough to improve? And I think he can definitely gain a bit more time in this chicane than he did last lap. Very easy to get squirrely on that exit and just spin your car, really. But we'll see what New Zealand Cam do in that Aston Martin, that nice looking Aston Martin, now that they actually updated the game. And where is Cam going? Oh, and a bit wide there, but he's again just under a tenth quicker than his current lap. So barring any mistakes, he should improve.
The car looks so planted, it must be said, through all these corners so far. All the wheels seem to be wanting to do exactly what the driver does, and he comes through the last corner now. We've seen a couple of big names fall a cropper. Not this time, not this guy. But will this lap be better for pole? It's a 1 minute 15.935 to extend his advantage at the top to just over 0.3 of a second. That is one hell of a gauntlet to be set down, as he had even a little bit of drift outside of turn 1 as a celebration.
Yeah, fair play to Cam there. The first and probably potentially the only one that will get into the 15s there. So, he's doing what he needs to. Obviously, he's putting that pressure on the cars around him. And, it's now down to Dan the Man, Jean, and potentially Jack Hickey to do something about it, as Jack Hickey is just about to start his final flying lap.
Yep, Jack Hickey then around the final corner is not going to want to be making similar mistakes as he made this time last lap. But as he heads down to turn number 1, then the Red Bull driver, DRS closes, brakes glowing red. Not that we can see them because they've got wheel covers these days, but the DRS is back open as he makes his way to turn number 2. We're going to see if this Red Bull has got the pace to mix it with the front guys. Currently, your provisional P4 sitter on the grid, and it's less than half a tenth that separates him and a front row start. He's going to want more than a front row start, though. He was provisionally pole earlier in the session, and Softy, he's half a tenth up on his personal best.
He is, a bit of a distraction there for that Alfa Romeo, and he's actually got a bit of oversteer, so that's going to be his lap done and dusted. He may be trying to go for another lap if he's got the fuel and if he's got the ERS, but that Alfa Romeo there having a wheel off, as New Zealand Cam has called it quits, has probably cost him an improvement, and it's pretty close between Dan, Jean and Jack Hickey, so I think Jack Hickey won't be particularly happy about that.
No, I think you're probably going to be right there. As Jean-Luc Taylor now comes across the line to start his final lap. We know, Softy, we've seen he's got the pace. It was brave, I have to say, as you pointed out as well, for him to back out of that lap when he knew it was going quicker, unless he made some sort of mistake that we didn't see in the last couple of corners, but to potentially sacrifice what would have been a very handy lap time. That takes some confidence that you think you've got more time, and he's not finding a huge amount in the first sector.
It's not, no, just under a tenth slower or faster than what he's previously done. But yeah, I mean, you always want to try and maximise the laps you do. I mean, you never know. You could easily make one mistake on this final lap, and that's it gone, and you could be kicking yourself. But he's not finding a massive amount of time, but he is finding time at the end of the day. I think it's going to be very important to see how his third sector or middle sector is, and he's 2/10 up nearly. So it's not going to be pole position as we see it, but it could very well be a top 2 at this moment in time. As Dan the Man's actually invalidated his lap, so Dan is not going to be improving. So it is all down to John whether he goes to P2 or stays P3.
Yeah, nice and tidy around the final corner. He's just got a little short sprint to the line. Oh, we're going to see an improvement from the Williams driver. He goes P2, 16.0. He joins Cam on the front row, demotes down to third place, who invalidated his lap time, and therefore isn't going to go any quicker than P3. But that's a much improved lap from Jean-Luc Taylor. How is Matt Tibos getting on, Softy? He's a tenth and a half up of his personal best middle sector time. Can we see an improvement for the Alpine driver? P8 at the moment. He's got nearly a second to find if he wants to get on pole, but not as much if he wants to mix it with the big boys. Across the line he comes, and he goes P6. So it is a slight improvement, but it's only the third row for the man who's been competing for the race win in the last 3 outings.
Yeah, and so not really where you want to be qualifying around here. Very hard to overtake with the downforce levels you run, and very easy to get into incidents, especially through these first few corners. There's not much room to manoeuvre if there's an incident around you or in front of you. So chances are you're going to be at the scene of the accident.
Yeah, well, what an interesting qualifying session. Cam trying his best to do the double. He was watching us for a period during qualifying. He did say hello. Sorry, Cam, we didn't notice, but hello. So let's give you a run through then of the grid order, or the qualifying results, I should say, by the looks of things. So Cam is your pole sitter, with Jean going to start in P2. Dan the Man qualified P3 with Jack Hickey in P4. Dan Morris then up in 5th place with Matt Tibos in 6th. Jack Pearson P7 with Phil Bargewell in P8. Mr. Chiapelli qualified 9th, but with a 5-place grid penalty is going to drop down. Alistair Bain was in P10. Court Gill P11th with Jake Davies P12. Magic Poop Cannon 13th, Dom Smith down in 14th, and ERT Jordan rounding out the runners and riders in P15. Well, Softy, very interesting, I'd say. And we've got a bit to look forward to as well, I think, looking ahead to this race.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. It could be another win for Cam. Again, very hard to overtake here with the downforce. Dan, what will want to get past Jean into turn 1, maybe even try around the outside or inside of turn 2/3. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Dan does. He needs to be careful though. One mistake, one bit of contact, and that could be his race ruined before it's even begun.
Yeah. Well, we've got the last few minutes before the start of the race. Softy, just quickly, what strategy-wise, what should we expect to see?
I think you're going to see more people on the soft tyres at the start. I mean, let me look at the race director at the minute just to see what people are on. The top 3 currently showing as soft tyres: Jack Hickey, Dan Morris, Tibos, Jack Pearson, Phil Bargewell showing as mediums. Alistair Bain soft, Court in 10th on the mediums, and then Dom and Magic Poop Cannon on the mediums.
Well, the drivers are ready. We're ready. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5 lights on at the Hungaroring. And we're underway, and it's a good getaway from the front row. Jack Hickey got some wheel spin a bit further back, and that's not going to help him on the run down to turn number 1. Dan the Man's got a great start. He's looking at Cam, and he's trying to go around the outside, but Cam blocks that one off. And they launch up to the inside. Matt Tibos that is up the inside of Jack Hickey, and Jean-Luc Taylor takes the lead of the race along the run down to turn number 2. They're side by side, the front 2. Cam's on the inside. John's going to send him round the outside. He's holding on to it at the moment. Cam tries to run out of room, but it's John that comes away with the race lead after turn number 3. Matt Tibos has made his way up to P4 with Jack Hickey dropping places, and there's a crash at the back, and it's Chiapelli and Dom Smith. It's the 2 Maxmen getting involved, with Phil Bargewell having dropped places as well. He's dropped all the way down to 13th. Jake Davis has had an incident by himself at the exit of turn number 4, and after what was quite a calm opening lap in the front, Softy, it all got very spicy towards the rear, and Matt Tibos now putting down the man under pressure.
It did, yeah. Obviously, John was there at the start. Actually, you know what? Jean got a better start than Dan and New Zealand Cam, but he seemed to get, in the second phase of that start, a bit of wheel spin, which unfortunately...
Oh, we got another car off! Alistair Bain's off! Alistair Bain's out of the race.
See, that's what I mean. There's a lot of incidents going on, and you get caught up, and it's unfortunate for everyone at the back. But yeah, Phil Bargewell didn't do too bad in qualifying, and then it's all sort of come undone, which is unfortunate there. But yeah, in terms of tyres, then looking at it, the top 2 actually are the only ones on the soft tyres. So 3rd all the way down to 8th are all on medium tyres. So Dan the Man will be looking, thinking, right, just keep these cars ahead in touching distance, and I'm sure he'll be able to attack late in the race on those softs. I think there's about a 1.5 second gap between the soft and medium around here. So as long as Dan can stay in that touching distance, he'll be able to attack later on.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how this race peters out. As you said, though, Softy, the top 2 we expect to have a little bit more pace at the beginning of this race. I have to say, I didn't expect to see Jean in the lead of the race. No disrespect to Jean, but Cam looked pretty set on, and as you said, John got a good start initially, but then almost seemed to bog down, and that, if anything, almost seemed to put down the man in the best opportunity to be making a move to turn 1, but Cam cleverly covering that off, maybe then focusing too much on Dan, didn't realise Jean sending it up the inside. But and we got Matt Tibos now spinning. Matt Tibos has spun in the background. Phil Bargewell's retired for the race. He spun on the exit of turn number 2, and Matt Tibos has dropped from 4th place, putting pressure on Dan all the way down to 8th.
Nearly crashing. Dan Morris nearly doing a Phil Bargewell there on the exit of turn 2. So it's all kicking off. But yeah, Matt Tibos, it goes from bad to worse for him after what should have been a very good race for him in that first.
Oh, look at this, Softy, back at the front. Cam has just set fastest lap of the race, and he's going to try and go the long way around on Sean. DRS has just been enabled. We're not going to have it immediately, but for the moment, John is held on, and Cam's now looking to go on the outside of turn number 2. Is he going to send it? He's late on the brakes. Jean tries to close the door, but Cam's still there, and in the end, he runs out of room, and ends up staying in P2.
Yeah, the outside line, if you're trying to overtake someone round turn 2, is actually far better than the inside, because it means that you've got the inside for turn 3, and the person that's on the inside just simply cannot defend from that. So he tried it there, but John kept him honest there, and he didn't quite work out. But this is allowing Dan the Man to close up. He's only half a second behind these two, so the more these two battle, the more Dan the Man will be happy with this. So Dan saving his ERS, while you've got New Zealand Cam on 11% ERS, Jean on 33. Dan the Man is sitting in the pound seat here, because you're running so much downforce. There's no heavy braking zones. It's very hard to regen your ERS around here to any meaningful level if you're trying to attack and defend. So I reckon it won't be too long before we see Dan actually attacking these two, as New Zealand Cam now has DRS and is actually using his ERS here. So, and as you can see, Jean's actually not losing any time, because you're just derating. So yeah, you've got that time, but he's trying to go around the outside here. He's actually thinking about it. He's holding it. Jean should give him room. He gives him just enough, but gets a better exit, and I don't think New Zealand Cam's going to be able to go around the outside. He's thinking about it. He's going on the inside, and actually it hits the back of him there, but no damage there for New Zealand Cam, it looks like, and not too much lost for Jean. So New Zealand Cam is very lucky there, but that could have ended very badly. But New Zealand Cam having a bit of a weave there, so that's probably him saying sorry about that.
Yeah, and these three dropping Jack Hickey as well. It must be said 2.5 seconds the gap now. But Softy, I thought we were about to see an airplane crash going into turn number 2.
Very lucky that it wasn't.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see John have a car suddenly on top of him, and he's being put under a lot of pressure here, and John not taking any usual racing lines. But as you said, these two nose to tail, there's nothing separating them, and Dan in the hot seat on the medium tyres, he's exactly where he wants to be, isn't he?
He is. He's got 73% ERS. So as soon as these two ahead start, they are low. They're on about 11% each. So down the man, we actually using Cam getting very close to John there, running a bit wide because of that as well. But yeah, Dan the Man can just sit here, wait until the end of the race, use all of his ERS to blast past them, and they're going to have no defence against that.
Yeah, well, we're riding on board then with Dan the Man. In front of us, we've got New Zealand Cam, we've got John, and Cam doesn't fancy it this time. John goes slightly defensive again, and Dan the Man's going to try and stick his nose up the inside. Is he? No, not quite, but Cam's got a really good exit this time. Another run down to turn number 2. He's got the lead of the race. Is John going to fight it up the inside? He is, and he sends it to the inside, and they almost make contact, but Cam has come out to turn number 2 in the lead of the race.
Yeah, very, very close there. Just left him just enough room. And Dan the Man up the inside of Jean going into turn 4. And Jean goes well wide and well off the circuit. He should give that place back, which he does, but that's allowed Dan into P2. So not what Jean wanted there.
But look how much time these two have lost now. They're almost a second behind Cam, and this has brought Jack Hickey into play. So, very good move from Dan. It must be said, brave going up the inside into turn number 4, but the amount of time that's cost them in terms of race management, that wasn't wise from either of them, really.
It wasn't. No, I'm going to assume that Jean actually allowed Dan to go past, to be honest, because you don't normally see a straight line deficit that much into turn 4. Dan overtook him basically halfway down that or up that straight. So I think Jean probably thinking, you know what, he's actually coming into the pits, is Jean, as Jack Hickey is going to get into P3 there. But yeah, I reckon Jean has allowed him through just so that Dan can chase after Cam. And the fact that Cam's on 5% ERS, he's going to be pitting in the next 1 or 2 laps, while Dan's on those mediums. It's looking very good for Dan, and I would also say Jack Hickey as well.
Yeah. So those two well positioned at the moment. Jean, as you said, is in the pits, and he's going to come out of the pits in P7 in quite a good pocket of space, it must be said. So he can now get his head down on those medium tyres and potentially try and perform the undercut on Cam and what would be Dan as well. Obviously Dan getting ahead of him just before Jean pitted, but Dan the Man then has reeled back in Cam, dropped Jack Hickey, and just half a second behind the Aston Martin driver. And Softy, we are seeing round 2 of Dan and Cam.
We are, yeah, but I think it potentially will go a different way this time in comparison to that first race. A different characteristic of circuit, and I'm sure Dan, is gonna wait. He's gonna play it smart. He's in a far stronger position this race in terms of strategy and ERS management than he was in that last race. So my money is definitely, if I was a betting man, would be on Dan the Man at the minute. And Jean down in P7, he still only regened 29% of his ERS. So in that pit stop, he didn't really regen too much, as we see New Zealand Cam getting a bit wide there, probably struggling on those tyres. But I'm actually surprised New Zealand Cam stayed out, this lap, because of the fact that Jean was right up his gearbox, Jean probably will overtake New Zealand Cam, coming when it comes to his pit stop.
Do you think he kind of has to stay out now, considering the fact that Jean is going to overtake him? Does he have to try and now take those soft tyres as long as possible to have better tyres at the end of the race?
I mean, very easily. It is very possible. I think that's probably what he's thinking. He's thinking, well, I don't really have the pace by the looks of it, so I'm just going to try and do something different. You never know. There might be a mistake that Jean makes later on, or even on his first few laps of these new set of tyres. So it's very possible. But New Zealand Camp needs to think, well, I've got Dan the man behind me. I don't want to battle him and go defensive, because then he's just going to lose more time. He's actually half spun there, and that's going to allow Dan the man around the outside. He's thinking about it, but Dan actually backs out of it. So New Zealand Cam is clearly struggling on those tyres. I actually reckon he's going to pit this lap. By the looks of it, he's struggling quite a lot. And Jack Hickey now right behind these two. So Dan the man's actually lost probably quite a lot of time just simply by sitting behind the Aston Martin.
Yeah, so maybe Dan would have been better off trying to make a move into turn 2. We saw him get very close, but think better of it. Softy made obviously a very good point at Dan playing it safe, but sometimes you need to lick the stamp and send it, as Cam does now decide to come into the pits, and it's going to be interesting to see where he does come out in relation to Jean. But of anybody, this has helped Jack Hickey massively, because it's brought him within DRS of Dan the man, and that's right where he needs to be, isn't it, Softy?
It is, yeah. I actually think, though, from what I just saw with straight line speed, I think Dan the man's probably got about 7 or 8 mile an hour more in top end speed. Bearing in mind, Jack Hickey had DRS at that same...
Oh, Softy, sorry, just to interrupt you, it's going to be awfully close here between Cam and Jean on the run down to turn 1. Cam's got the inside line, Jean's got the heat in his tyres, they make contact, Jean's pushed wide, Cam for the moment is still there, but Jean, with that bit of extra heat in his tyres, does find his way past and into the net lead of the race, ahead of Cam, but that was almightily close, and we saw a bit of contact, we saw Cam get his elbows out, let's hope for his sake he doesn't have any damage.
Yeah, I think I just caught the end of that, but I think potentially that might have actually been John maybe turning in a bit too early, trying to hit the apex at turn 1. Obviously, Cam was there, so no harm done in the end, but that has, of course, allowed John to easily get that position on New Zealand Cam and jumping as we said he would. But Cam does have 2 laps younger tyres compared to Jean, but track position is very important around here.
Yep, certainly is. Interestingly, looking at the front, Jack Hickey now over a second and a half behind down the man. So clearly not just with straight line advantage down the man, but with genuine pace advantage as well. So that is really quite interesting to see. Jack Hickey's going to want to be trying to hold on to down as much as we can. We've got a spin. I think that's Mr. Chiappelli at the start of sector 2. But Cam then just half a second behind John. And could we see yet more fireworks between these two?
I think so. I think this is definitely probably the battle for what I'd say maybe even P3, to be honest. I reckon it will be Dan and Jack Hickey P1 and 2, and then obviously these two fighting for that P3. But at the minute, New Zealand Cam is the one with more errs at the minute. So I think New Zealand Cam just needs to play it safe, don't make any mistakes, save that errs, and attack Jean a bit later in the race when Jean's tyres are more worn. I think tyre wear is not great round here. So yeah, New Zealand Cam should play that long game in. For his sake, it should reap those rewards at the very end. But again, you sort of want that track position. So it's unfortunate for Cam that there was a bit of contact going into the turn 1 after he came out of the pits.
Yeah, right. Well, we're riding on board now with Cam, who is, well, he's almost designing a new rear wing for Jean at the moment. He's that close to the car, and we now can see in full picture. Oh, and there's very nearly an accident.
That was close.
Cam locked up, and it was going straight to the scene of the accident. I have no idea how that incident was avoided. Softy, my heart was in my mouth. I can't imagine what was going through Cam's mind.
What I was going to say, I just shit myself, I think. What I'm going to say is that was absolutely terrifying. I don't know how they didn't touch. It must have been millimetres, but, that's very lucky, and Jean's now going to have a bit of traffic with Matt Tibos just ahead, so this is, New Zealand Cam's opportunity to try and reclose that gap and, and try a move on Jean.
I still don't think my heart rate's recovered from that. I felt like I was going to the scene of the accident. That was horrifying. I can't imagine what it was like from Cam's perspective. Anyway, out of the front, Jack Hickey still a second and a half behind Dan the Man, so nothing really much changing there. But this Matt Tibos traffic is very much helping Cam stick with Jean, although he was very close. And I don't know if he made a little mistake after that chicane.
He did,
but
got very squirrely on the exit of the chicane there.
Fine, but I tell you what, Jean's going to be hoping he can clear Matt Tibos, and that Cam doesn't, because this is already really hindering Jean's race, and it's playing into the hands, as you've already said, Softy, of the likes of Jack Hickey and Dan the Man, who started on those medium tyres. These two were the only two to start on the soft tyres, and they're finding traffic hard.
It is, yeah, and this is what I mean. This is why I think the medium to soft is always a good strategy on circuits that are difficult. As Matt Tibos not really making. Oh, and actually, saying
here comes Cam.
The straight line speeds.
He's being squeezed onto the grass, but Cam finds a way round. He's gone deep, probably from having a bit of grass on his tyres. But on the cutback now, he's going to have the DRS. Matt Tibos is on the inside, but Cam's on the outside, and that becomes the inside into turn number 2. And he was brave. He was cutting daisies, but he's found himself back ahead of Jean-Luc Taylor and up into 4th place in the race.
I don't know where Jean's straight line speed was there. I don't know if he was sort of got a bit of a poor exit, but Matt Tibos and Jean were just side by side with no straight line speed, and next thing you know, New Zealand Cam ran the outside half on the grass, bearing in mind, into turn 1, makes the move. Jean, I would say, is slightly corner cut turn 1 because I think he's probably thinking, what just happened? And then, New Zealand Cam got the better exit there. So that was chaos. And actually, I'd probably say that's very reminiscent of Schumacher and Hakkinen at Spa in 2000.
Yep. That was amazing racing. Fair play to them for not crashing into each other either. Not much grip on the grass, as we all know, but Cam doesn't seem to do anything. Now we've got Jack Hickey and Dan the Man in the pits, and they're leaving the pits as they enter the pits. So Dan the Man heading down this pit straight now, and Cam's coming out the final corner.
Be very close.
This is going to be very, very tight indeed.
Cam's
Dan the Man at the pit exit, and Cam's in the lead of the race. I didn't expect that, and Jean could even be ahead of Dan here as well. Dan's tyres aren't up to speed yet. Jean-Luc Taylor getting very close to the back of him. He doesn't got DRS, interestingly, on the run down to turn number 2. That's cost Jean, who does stay behind Dan the Man, with now the sticky, soft tyres, is now going to have a chance to reel in Cam.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, there's still a fair few ways to go. Actually, Dan's weaving there, so I think it's quite obvious that Jean could have actually probably got Dan the Man there, but probably backed out of it. It looked like he actually lifted off the throttle on the exit of turn 1 there. But yeah, Cam's going to have to defend for his life with Dan on those softs. So it's going to be a massively uphill struggle. But all Cam needs to do is just save his ears, deploy it on that main straight, just to ensure that he's got that gap. But yeah, it's going to be New Zealand Cam's fight of his life, and Jack Hickey down in P6, so it's potentially not worked quite as well for Jack Hickey, so he's going to need to get through 2 cars to finish potentially second in this race, or even potentially third. So I said Jack Hickey probably is looking at a P2, but where he's come out now is Matt Tibos is actually in the pits to change onto those softs, so he's only got 2 cars potentially now to get that P2, and Matt Tibos has sped in the pits.
Yeah, unlucky there for the Alpine driver, staying out as long as he could. In the end, not quite working for him. Down the Man then, now within a second of Cam. New DRS this lap, and with 6 laps to go, he's going to have to be looking at getting past that Aston Martin as soon as he can, while these soft tyres are still at their best.
Yeah, I think it should be quite easy to gain time, so I think Dan should definitely save just his ears, yet let the tyres do the work in terms of gaining that time. He's got 52% ERS opposed to Cam's 13%, and Cam's ERS is not regenning by the looks of it at the minute, so and now it's only half a second, so I can hear the Jaws music playing in the background at the minute for Cam.
And Jack Hickey now less than a second behind Jean as well. These soft tyres coming to these two, and Dan the Man just 4 tenths behind Cam. He can smell his prey, Softy. The Jaws music is playing, and surely we're going to see a change for the lead of the race any moment now. Dan the Man's got 2 DRS zones coming up, 2 opportunities to get past Cam, put a bit of distance between himself, and clear off into the sunset. This track always offers close racing. It's not always easy to overtake. Dan the Man sets the fastest lap of the race. Cam is going super defensive. He leaves a little gap to the inside. There's a bigger gap on the outside. Dan the Man later on the brakes. Cam even later on the brakes. But with the cutback, Dan the Man is going to have the DRS. Cam is squeezing him. He's squeezing him as much as he can. And on the run down to turn number 2, Dan the man's got the wide line. It allows him to open the steering up more. They're side by side. They're wheel to wheel. They're almost touching. And through turn number 3, they are touching. And on the run up to turn number 4 now. Thanks to the extra battery life, they have touched. But Dan the man has finally taken the lead of the race. Cam almost ended up off the track and almost ended up with no front wing. Jack Hickey made his way up to P3, but Softy, that was so close to something disastrous going on between these two.
It was very close. I think it was more a case of Cam's sort of inaccuracy using the pad. You know, it just meant that, you know, there was a bit of wheel bang in there. You know, that sent Cam sort of, you know, unsettled the car, which meant he ended up going wide. But, you know, at the minute, I think it's looking very good for Dan the man. And, you know, I think Cam needs to probably be careful of Jack Hickey on those softs, you know, pulling in the gap.
Yeah, well, the gap is still less than a second, so Cam's not out of this one yet, but you have to say, with the tyres and by hearing obviously with the battery as well, it's not an ideal situation for Cam to be in, but we know he's a racer, we know he's a fighter, and he's going to try and win this race nonetheless. Jack Hickey, as we said, has moved his way up into 3rd place now, 2 seconds behind these two, and with 4 laps to go. He's got a bit of a task to try and catch them, particularly if Cam does keep hold of that DRS, because that's going to make it easier for him to stay within touching distance of Dan, and could end up being the difference in this race between who finishes 2nd and who finishes 3rd. John, having pitted very early for those medium tyres, is now dropping off the back of these guys. We haven't really talked much about what's going on in the rest of the race, it must be said, because we've had a very entertaining battle going on towards the front. Unfortunately, there isn't very much going on through the rest of the race. Everyone's quite far spread apart, so if nobody minds, we're going to keep our attention towards the front of this race. And Softy, are we seeing evidence of what this sort of track does do in terms of the racing? Does it make it a little bit mundane for the drivers?
It does, yeah. I think ever since I've been in TG1 and just league racing in general, it's just it's such a type of circuit where everyone's running such downforce that, one, it's hard to overtake, and 2, it's very easy to sort of make mistakes, just lose time here and there by missing apexes and things. So it does lend itself to a pretty boring race in the end. You know, it's just a bit too easy for people to make mistakes if they're not sort of up to scratch and focused on their job, as Matt Tibos has retired at the penultimate corner by the looks of it there, and he's actually spun it, so his day goes from bad and badder, so that's unfortunate there. But New Zealand Cam is sort of keeping within that half a second gap, although Dan's not got much ERS himself, 16% to Cam's 2%, so I think Cam in this middle sector really just needs to try and save as much ERS as he can, to sort of have better straight line speed on that straight, because if you're under that 10%, you're going to lose time to the car ahead if they're over 10%. So you know, Cam's never been the greatest when it comes to his ERS management from when I've been commentating and riding on board with him, so he just needs to play a bit more smart to potentially get the opportunity he needs.
Yep. Cam's not letting this one go, and on those medium tyres, Dan the man on the soft tyres, we heard that in Austria the softs were working very well, but Dan not having much luck on these softs around the Hungaroring, and so as we head onto the main straight now, Dan's about to start the penultimate lap. We have got some traffic. That's Dom and Jordan who are getting out of the way, who are battling themselves, and Jordan's going to get past Dom here for 10th place, but we're focusing on what is the battle for the lead. Cam goes through the Red Bull driver and towards turn number 2 now. He's going to have DRS, and Softy, is he going to be close enough to take the lead? Well, he's not, because Dan the man also has DRS, which means that potentially onto the last lap, we're still not going to know who's going to win this race.
It's not. It's very close. That helped Dan having those lapped cars there, because it gave him the DRS to defend. But Cam's on 0% ERS, so Cam is not doing what he needs to do. Yes, granted, he's very close. He's in touching distance, but you know, Dan's on 11%, so Dan can just save his ERS for that main straight, and you know, Cam's not going to be close enough. He's going to have an almighty lunge or a very good exit out of that final corner to be able to attack. He's going to have the advantage with DRS, of course, so it is possible, but you know, he just needs to try, you know, and get that ERS as high as he can for one meaningful run into turn 1, and you know, he does appear to be trying to get as close as he possibly can at the minute, so we'll see what he can do into turn 1 on this lap.
Yeah, 1 lap to go. Look at the gap. There's nothing between the two of them. Dan the man started on the medium tyres, went to the soft for the last stint. His thought it would have given him the grip to win this race. It gave him the grip to take the lead of the race. But is it enough to win the race? As they head down now to turn 1 for one last time, Cam with the DRS is getting close to Dan. He's going to have to be late on the brakes. But is he just setting himself for turn number 2? Dan goes defensive. He's defending here, and he's touched. And Dan the man is sent spinning around. Cam clipped the back of him and then put the Ferrari into a spin. And that's promoted Jack Hickey to P2. Dan the man only just got going again now, and he's still ahead of Jean somehow, but that has given Cam the lead of the race, with Jack Hickey now in second place, and this is drama on the last lap. Cam surely is going to come across the line to win the race for this time, at least on the track, but Softy, that was the worst possible outcome surely for both drivers.
Oh, and Dan the man nearly losing there, but yeah, I think it seemed like Dan was a bit slow on throttle because he took a tighter line into the corner, and New Zealand Cam tried the switch back, and then a bit of contact there. I don't think it wasn't malicious in my eyes. It is unfortunate, but I can probably think that that's going to lead to Cam getting a few places drop there, and possibly even a win for Jack Hickey. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm sure Dan probably will take that one to the stewards, but Jean is right behind Dan at the minute. But here comes Cam for the line at least.
Well, what an entertaining last lap. We could have had a fantastic battle. Instead, we've had a controversial incident. And for the moment, at least, Cam has rounded the final corner to win at the Hungary ring. The Aston Martin driver has potentially taken the double, with Jack Hickey coming across the line in second. Dan the man does just hold off for third place, with Jean coming home in fourth. And then it's a long wait for Court to cross the line in P5. But you thought that was long. Make a cup of tea before the next driver crosses the line. Magic Poop Cannon is having a great battle with Jack, who caught him towards the end. I think it was actually Magic Poop Cannon making his way past Jack Pearson. Jack Pearson on those hard tyres pitted early on, but Magic Poop Cannon in the end on the soft tyres in the AlphaTauri did find his way past, and is going to take P6, with Jack Pearson coming home on the road at least P7. Very close, I have to say, but Dan Morris is then going to be the next across the line. He's going to finish in P8. Yes, he does. And then we got a bit of a wait for Chiapelli. Dom Smith and ERT Jordan have already finished the race. They're 10th and 11th. Mr. Chiapelli's going to cross the line, P9. But Softy, where do we start on that last lap? You said that it looked like there was nothing malicious, but you expect to see Cam get a penalty.
End of the day, he sort of took out the car ahead of him. Whether it was malicious or not, I've had a few times where, I've won a race because of an incident, and I've then lost that win because of that incident. So I would probably say it's 100% guaranteed that if the stewards do deem it Cam's fault, that he will lose that position, and potentially even probably drop off the podium, depending on what sort of penalty it is. So I would say, from experience, Jack Hickey probably will inherit this win. It's unfortunate because I think New Zealand Cam drove fantastically. He did well, like he did in Austria, with that, and it was potentially going to be a last lap effort around the outside of turn 3, which, by the looks of it, he was going to get a better exit than Dan. And that's unfortunately what ended up causing that incident. Is Dan took a tight line, got on the power later than Cam, and sort of they both met in the middle. Yeah,
well, it was a shame for the race to be ended like that. It was jolly entertaining beforehand. So it's it was interesting in the end, but nonetheless, I have to say it's going to be a shame to see Cam lose that race win, because, as you said, he did drive very well. But if the crime is fitting of a punishment, as Dom Smith would say, if you don't want the time, don't do the crime. So let's give you a rundown of the provisional race classification for the Hungary. So Cam is your provisional race winner, with Jack Hickey P2, Dan the man in P3, with Jean-Luc Taylor P4, Court Gill is in 5th, Magic Poop Cannon 6th, Jack Pearson in 7th, Dan Morris is in 8th, P9 goes to Mr. Chiapelli, P10 for Dom Smith, Jordan is P11 with Matt Tibos P12, Phil Bargewell 13th, Alistair Bain 14th, and Jake Davies in P15. So, Softy, before we end our evening of action tonight, how would you sum up what we have seen this evening?
I'd say Hungary, not an amazing race, other than the fight for the lead. A very spectacular end, I must say. Austria definitely was the better one out of the two. So I'd say some good racing, some hard racing, some clean racing, quite a lot of spins, quite a lot of crashes. But yeah, I would say overall an interesting night of TGP1.
Yep, I'd happen to agree with that. And obviously, without the Confessor racing tonight as well, it's worth noting that Dan the Man, regardless of what happens in the Hungaroring in terms of penalties, etc., has closed the gap to the championship leader, but he's still got one hell of a metaphoric mountain to climb. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I think we've had two very exciting races. We've had the privilege of watching tonight, Softy, and we're going to do it all again next week in what will be the penultimate week of racing. We hope we're going to have Shane back for next week. Of course, it'd be a shame for him to lose the title potentially from just lack of activity, which would be an awful shame. So we want to see a championship battle. I think I speak for everybody in that regard. But we're going to see you next week. Nonetheless, we're going to be racing in China and we're going to be racing in Imola. So we have got two great races coming ahead, I'm sure. The return to the Chinese race in Shanghai. But nonetheless, I've been Mike Noon. Softy, thank you very much as ever for joining me in the commentary box. We're going to see you next week. It's been a TGP Series production. We'll see you on PS4. For now, good night.